okay, well, if I just do my tickets during the day, and then at night I'll just start to do this because I find it fun and it'll be okay. Like don't do that to yourself. I know we have that tendency because we love what we do, but this is truly a project that everybody needs to have eyes on, and the executives in your company need to know that it has to happen. So don't avoid that executive buy-in. Even if it does delay it a little bit, you're not going to regret it because you're going to be given the time and resources that you need to execute this correctly. And work-life balance, guys. You just got to do it. And that leads us into our last point. Don't underestimate the time this project is going to take. You could have a small org or a large org. It is something that takes a lot of thought and consideration because now you're building and scaling towards the future. It's not just correcting minor issues, you're thinking about the future of your org and scalability for processes that you haven't even been asked to build yet. So it's really important to give yourself the proper time needed to execute this in a way that makes sense. Anything to add, Christy?
Nope. That's my contribution.
Chris, I see you're asking about documentation. That is actually what we're going to go into next. Our first tip, document. Um, I know everybody differs on their level of love of documentation. Christy and I love it
I love
excessively.
documentation.
Some people not so much, and that's okay. But in this case, um, if you don't document, you're going to regret it. Just because again of how many things that you are changing. You want to document so that you can capture those legacy inconsistencies that we talked about earlier, where you have a workflow rule or even two separate process builders that have two separate nodes that are named two separate things, but they're doing the exact same action. You know, like this is what you will discover as you're going through and documenting every step of the current org. Also, the visuals will help your stakeholders to understand the current state versus what the future state could be. I don't know how many times I've, built a process builder. And, anytime with process builder, you go bigger than 5 nodes, you're going to be waiting a while you click on each one. And I had a process builder in particular that I think was in excess of 70 nodes. And trying to go through the individual logic with my boss, clicking on each node and seeing like, okay, well, here's the criteria, here's the criteria. Do you think this works? Yes, no. Like each click took like 30 to 35 seconds to load. It was painful. Versus having a document like this where we can look at it essentially like um, an Excel chart and see very quickly like here's the node name, here's the criteria for it, here's what it does this work, should we change it, should we adjust. That helps not only in this business case but other business cases where you are expected to build out the logic and get that kind of buy-in. Also, for those of you who are very much against documenting, if you are new to Flow, documenting those old automations will help you visualize what needs to be built. So by going through it, writing out the logic, and seeing it visually for yourself, you're going to understand like, okay, if this happens, this is what needs to be executed. And that's going to help you in the next step when you're actually building that flow. We have a bit.ly link to the template that we have, but I just wanted to show you guys here. Reload that process bar. This is the template that we use a lot. I mean, I use it a lot. Christy, I think you've edited your version and used something similar to this, yeah?
Mm-hmm.
And what we've learned over a lot of trial and error is to have all of this information in here just so like after we've touched this process automation, we've activated it, we've left it alone for a couple months, we come back into it, we can easily catch up to right where we left off. And so right up at the top, we have the name, the API name, the type up here, is it a flow, is it a process builder, stuff like that. The API version that it's going off of, which is so important because every time I get like a Salesforce email of like the retirement digest of like, hey, API versions, I think the last one was 20 through 30 are getting retired at such a date, such and such date. it's a lot easier for me to go through my documents than to go into every automation and be like, oh God, is something disastrous hiding? Um, the process owner, the stakeholders, the last modified by, especially if you're working in a bigger org where you may not be the owner of that particular automation, it pays to know right off the bat who you need to go to talk to, as well as those stakeholders. And then I love the last modified by, because when things suddenly go wrong in my org, like this morning, um, I like to quickly look at, well, what did I last modify in terms of automation? And let's go look at those first. Um, the next part of this template is looking at the business process description. And this is something not just for admins, but for your end users. What is this automation actually doing for the business? Not the back end logic, but why are we building this? This is going to help the SEs to, facilitate moving opportunities from one stage to the next quicker so that AEs can work off of them. Just those kinds of descriptions, so that you can then, in the future be like, okay, I have this existing automation. Can it go into this one as well? And then the last step that we have is, well, second to last, is the process logic. And so I break it down like I break down process builder, but this works for workflow rules and flow as well. So I put in the node name, and then I put in the criteria. And so that's like all of my logic. Whether it's a formula, I'll put in the formula itself, or if it's criteria based, I'll put in all of the criteria, and then I'll put in the 1 and 2 or 3, just to have that all in there. Then I'll have the immediate action, what it does, list that all out. If there's a scheduled action, I'll put that in there as well. And then I'll have whether or not after this node we have a stop or we have an evaluate next criteria. And so that really helps me to visualize, and again, helps my end user. What do you think of this, Christy?
Yeah, I love it. I would just say that of course it's always easier to document as you go, not after the fact, which it's probably going to be after the fact for a lot of you, but then make a habit out of it. So when you're documenting your flows and the next thing you make, document it while you're doing. It kind of turns into like pseudocode. I'm writing out what I'm actually going to do, and then it's easier for me to build it. And then there are some questions in the chat just about what tools you should use for
Oh, okay.
documentation.
Yeah, yeah.
And I would say just anything collaborative. I mean, of course, you can
Yeah.
document anywhere, but the point of the documentation is to be able to share it with your team, share it with stakeholders, have them comment on it, ask questions, so that everybody's kind of aligned across. So, I mean, we use at my work, we use Confluence, we use Google Docs, we also have Quip. There's like lots of different places you can put it in. Mark mentioned a tool called Notion that he likes, and
Oh,
then things like
Notion.
Lucid Chart as
Mhm.
well. And for tools like Confluence or even Quip, you can actually embed Lucid Charts directly in these documents. So things that work together are always beneficial too.
And I will say, like, not to get in too nitty gritty into the documentation, because I know for a lot of us, we're already dreading the thought of having to document all of this. But for any kind of documentation that you do, I would set like a reminder for yourself for checking in on that documentation, on like a quarterly basis, to make sure that it's still, to make sure that it's not stale. Because we can build this once, and what I do is when I build my documentation, it's based on the flow, or it's based on the process builder, it's based on the workflow rule. And so when I make changes to it, I'm going back to that same document, updating the last modified date, and making my changes. So that's like the habit that I've gotten into. But with those processes or automations that you don't touch in a while, on a quarterly basis, you want to check on them so that that information's not stale. So setting reminders for yourself, just to make sure that you're not, having, the process builder that you deactivated 4 months ago is not still in the in the file of active processes in terms of documents. And I know that gets
It's a
into
good
the
tip.
weeds a little bit, and you guys are already hating like the idea of documenting, but just saying.
Just do it.
Just, it's gonna be better for you, I promise. Let's see. All right, so that is what we have in terms of our first tip. I'm going to click on here, and we're going to go and talk about why flow is nothing to fear, Right, Christy?
Yes, it's nothing to
All
fear.
right. All right. So I have a use case here. Um, and I think it's a pretty common use case. I have a business analyst that came to me on Slack and was like, "Hey, Tracy, you know that custom closed one date field that we have?" And I say yes, while internally I'm screaming. Um,
Yeah, you're like, why do we have that?
their wish is my command. It is what it is. What? Um, they they come to me and they say, "Hey, it doesn't look like it updates automatically. It looks like it's a manual update. Can it be whenever that the opportunity stage is changed to close one, and only when it's changed to close one, can we update that field with today's date?" And I say, "Yes, business analyst, we certainly can. I can make that for you." In my head, that sounds really simple and easy, not a problem. Well, later that same afternoon, my CEO comes up to me and she says, "Listen, I know this sounds crazy, and I know I know your feelings on email alerts, but I want every time an opportunity that's over $100,000 is closed one, I want to be emailed with that opportunity's information." And I look her dead in the eyes and I say, "Why not Chatter?" No, I
Why
don't.
not
I say,
Slack?
"Why not Slack?" I say, "Not a problem. I can do that too." So both of these are relatively simple requests, and they're also kind of related because they are looking at the opportunity object and they're looking at a stage change. Now, if with those two requests, if I were to do them in a workflow rule, it's very simple. It's if something happens, then do this, because that's all that workflow rules are. If then, if then, if then. So if the opportunity stage is changed to closed one, then update that field. If the opportunity is closed one and over $100,000, then let's email that CEO. And so in back in the day, that's how we'd make those workflow rules. But in reality, that's making two workflow rules. So it's not as efficient as it could be. Then comes in process builder, and process builder, well, I can make that in one process builder. I just have two nodes. So that seems like fantastic too, right? If the opportunity stage is changed to closed one, let's go ahead and update that field. So now the business analyst has their data. And then let's have the selection of evaluate the next criteria, right? Because it's been closed one, but let's take it a step further and look at it. So if the opportunity is closed one and over $100,000, let's have our immediate criteria be of emailing that CEO. Is this technically more efficient? Yes, it's in one process builder with two nodes. Could we stop there? For sure. But since we're moving to flow, this is what we need to address so that we can now take this idea and put this into flow itself. But looking at workflow rules and process builder, they are both looking at if then, if then. Now, Flow can do a whole host of different um, sets of logic, but the idea of consolidating workflow rules and process builder into Flow, you're just consolidating if-then statements. It's nothing more complicated than that. And I know for those of us who are new to Flow, like you're overwhelmed by the possibilities of what it can do, um, but in this consolidation effort, you're just consolidating those if-thens. Does that make sense, Christy?
It makes sense. I hate both of these use cases, but they're simple and easy to wrap our heads around.
I know you hate both of them, but am I wrong in saying that, like, have you been requested of these things before?
Yeah, I
All
like
right.
to try to say no to no to things like this.
I
I
just
love it whenever I'm trying to think of use cases for some sort of speaker thing. Like I can never think of anything. Just like my whole work history just like goes out the door and I think of the dumbest things.
in both of these use cases, would we try and strategize with the end user to try and convince them of another route? Yes, of course. But do you still get asked of these things, and even when you try and strategize, you still end up doing these? Yes.
Daily, daily.
Okay.
Okay, so we know that this is two workflow rules. It's one process builder.
Mhm.
How, like, what happens next? How do we get it into flow?
Man, if my mouse would behave with me.
To go the right direction.
I did. Well, I just moved the mouse. I didn't even click. The next step is to establish and decide on which flow. Are we doing a before slave or an after save, and wait, back up, what does that even mean?
I would also like to mention that this comes into play when you choose record triggered flow. So this is
Yes,
functioning now as like a trigger.
correct. Yes. Thank you. Great point for that. So when deciding between a before save flow or an after save flow, again, only in record triggered flows, which is what you'll be creating for a lot of these consolidating efforts. Would that be fair to say, Christy?
Yeah, and what gives you like the same functionality as what a process builder was doing. It was a record
Yes.
triggered. Yeah.
Yep. Um, Before save flows, you are using these only if you are updating fields and staying within the object that you started from. So I'm on opportunities, I'm on an opportunity record, I'm only going to update that opportunity record, right? If I'm only updating that fields on that particular opportunity record, then I can do this in a before saves flow, which is very cool. Because that's just really cool. If I'm looking to update related records to that opportunity, like, am I going to need to update a contact role on the primary contact? Am I going to, you know, send X, Y, and Z? Anything that's related to the opportunity but separate from the opportunity, I am then looking at an after save flow.
Even actions, sending emails, posting in
Sending
Chatter.
emails would be also an after save flow. So that is how you would decide. You're saying, yes, I'm doing a record triggered flow, and then what are my actions? Based on my actions, I'm doing before save or after save. And this becomes an easy decision after you've documented, because you can easily look at your documentation and say, okay, field update, field update, field update, email alerts. Dang it.
I think
And then
Salesforce has made it really easy too. I think it was, I don't know, this latest release or the one before that where they actually put, when you're on this screen trying to choose, they put the definition there for you and say, no, we think you should use this one instead. So
Yep, very true. So that is how you decide between the flows. Hopefully that gives some clarity. Our next step is to use your resources. So I know when you first open the flow template or the flow canvas, my apologies. Wait, sorry, kids on the lung. Gosh.
you can do it.
Move. Okay. Hmm. Ah,
Poor
okay.
Chase.
It's all good. Just breathing. Um, when if you're new to flow and you open up that flow canvas and you click on the element and you see all of these choices that you have, you again get really overwhelmed by what you're supposed to do. Like, I see things like, when I first started, I'd see like collection sort or loop, and I'd be like, oh, exit, 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 exit. I'm not ready for this. um but that's not necessarily your use case right now in doing this consolidation effort. Again, workflow rules and process builders, you're looking at if thens. And so that's essentially what you're building here in Flow. So it's a very simplified way to start in Flow and get your feet wet before you go into things like, a loop or something like that. Um, and so for this particular use case, to make both the business analyst and the CEO happy, I am using three resources: my decision element, my action element, and my update element. My decision element is where I'm going to put in that filter criteria for both use cases. I'm going to have the flow say, hey, look at this, tell me what are I'm going to give you the logic, and then from there I'm going to have you do things. And so that is then where my other elements come into play. The action element does a whole host of awesome things. Oh my gosh. In this case, for our use case, it will be sending the email. And then our update element is just what it says. It updates and nothing more than that. Anything you want to add to that, Christy?
No, I don't think so. Mark made a good comment in the chat though that just like the best way to start figuring out what these things are is just start figuring out what these things are. Just spin up a trailhead playground or a sandbox and just like start playing with everything.
That's very true. With any of these use cases, if you're feeling nervous, even if you feeling nervous about spinning it up in your own company's sandbox and seeing what you can build, you know, build up, spin up a dev org and like just take the idea of that and see how you can build it. Because when you're in a safe environment, nothing's going to happen. You're just teaching yourself. You're just working through it.
We might get to this in the next screen. I can't remember, but my sneaky little trick is if you go to a field, in Object Manager and click the "Where is this used" button, and it shows you all the process builders it's in. If you open the process builder from that screen,
Mhm.
it will actually open it for you in a flow. Which the first time I did that, I was like, "What? I didn't make this in a flow." But it puts it on the flow canvas for you so you can see what all those nodes look like in flow, and then you could actually just edit that or save that as a new version as like a starting place of already having that in there, and then it's just like cleaning it up a little bit because it might duplicate some things from being in process builder.
True.
But it's a great way to just like visualize that, oh yeah, it's all the same stuff but on this canvas instead.
I would recommend using it for a smaller process builder with less nodes because it does divide up
Duplicate a
the
bunch of
nodes.
stuff.
It does duplicate a bunch of stuff. Well, not duplicate. Well, it makes it makes weird choices. We'll say that. So maybe with a simpler process builder that has less nodes. So yeah, finding any field referenced in a process builder, clicking on where is this used, click on that process builder, it opens it up to the flow canvas. And then yeah, just as Christy said, like double click into everything and see like how it's making those decisions and making those choices. And then from there, if you want, you can
It's
clone
cake.
it, rename all the resources in it because it's don't leave that as is and add your descriptions. But that's another great way to start if you're feeling intimidated by blank canvas syndrome. um, this is how our flow looks as a result of our use cases, and I'm actually going to go into our dev org that I finally got myself unlocked out of. So great. Now, so again, this is a record triggered flow, and I'm actually going to go into the first element here so that we can talk about it. If I hit edits, we actually added entry conditions in this case. And we said, hey, when the stage name is changed, then you are going to do actions and related records. From a
Which I have feelings
scalability,
about.
which we have feelings about. Would you like to dive into the feelings? We share these feelings, but I think you can articulate it
Well,
better.
it's good timing because Chris actually just asked this question: how
Yeah.
many flows per object should you have?
Thank you for the
Um,
question.
and of course we want to keep it as close to one, trigger per object as possible. There might be times where you're going to need more than that, but the entry criteria here, I mean, in this use case, this is super simple. This is all we're doing with it, so it's okay to have this. But if we were going to add more processes to this, I would probably just remove that and put a decision element at the beginning of the flow to see which path it needs to take.
Hmm.
um, so depending on your use cases, you might have criteria here or you might not.
Yeah. Yeah. So again, this is, it again depends on um, your use case, but for scalability, having entry conditions, it may not be the most scalable option. The more scalable option may be like defining no entry criteria and then having that first decision, and then that first decision takes you on, a complicated path this way or a complicated path that way.
Yeah.
But again, for this case, we added it just so we could talk about it, right, Christy?
Yeah, just so we could talk about it.
There it
But
is.
seriously, it depends on your your use cases. So, and that's when it comes back to documentation. Figure out what you need to do, what the big picture is going to be,
Hmm.
and then how many flows is that, logically organized into, and what the impact is going to be for your org.
Yep. So after we have our entry criteria, we go right here into the decision. And I'm going to go ahead and hit edit on this element. And something, if you are new to Flow, um, the outcome order is very important to think about, especially if you have more than especially any amount of decisions, honestly, you have to think of your outcome order, because that record is going to come in, and the second it hits something here that it finds to be true, that's the path that it's taking. So you have to think of those closely related conditions and make sure that you're dragging and dropping them into the correct order. So that is why we are looking at stage equals closed one and the amount is greater than 100,000. That's what our record is hitting first, so that it's triggering in the right order. Does that make sense?
Makes sense.
Perfect. And then our other criteria here is just looking at if the stage equals closed one. And so then with each of these elements, we are updating that closed one date, that very special, very necessary separate closed one date from the actual closed one date, because the business analyst swears they need it. And then in the path of if it's over 100K, we are emailing the CEO, who swears she will not get annoyed by all the emails that come in. Um, do I sound a little jaded? I feel like I sound a little jaded.
Never.
Okay. So that is how these workflow rules transitioned into one process builder, transitioned into one record triggered flow. Before I go forward, do we have any other questions on that before I move onto another thing?
Just some conversation about the number of flows and stuff. I was just looking
Oh
at
yeah.
this though, and I decided that we could get rid of one of those pink nodes because we could send the email action first and then combine the two paths
And then
into
combine
one
the two here.
update.
Ooh,
Yeah.
girl. Yeah, that would be pretty.
Boom.
We could do that too.
But only for this very specific use case.
But only for this very specific use case. But that's how cool Flow is. So thank you for that example. And then let's see, I'll go back into present. I think that's it for this. Oh yes. So we will end with again,
Wait,
not
before
forgetting.
you stop talking, I feel
Yeah,
like will you go back to the slide that had the resources on it? Because I think it might just be good to review again. I think it's slide number 7.
slide number 7. So sorry. Thank you.
Yeah. So like a decision in Flow would be what in Process Builder?
That would be your criteria node.
Your criteria node. And then the action is just
The
your
immediate action
actions,
node or your scheduled action node,
which
depending
would be
on.
the same as the update. So really we're doing all the same things as everyone is already familiar with in Process Builder.
Very true.
I just wanted to like drive that home. Like they might be different icons and different colors and different shapes, but it's truly like the same functionality.
Yes. And actually, since we're going back a little bit and hitting on points that we may have missed, I wanted to talk about other things, before you get this process started, other things that you can do in your org before you start the consolidation process. One of them being Salesforce Optimizer. Why do we always forget this beautiful, beautiful little tool?
I
Um,
love it.
if right, if you are in setup, click on the optimizer and run that thing. If you have a bigger org, you may want to do it on like a Friday just in case. But optimizer is a great way to help you, especially at the beginning, start to see like where you can make improvements. And I think, Christy, what you do is you have this run on a monthly cadence. And so you're able to easily see the improvements that have been made month over month because your optimizer report is getting better and better.
Yeah.
And so that's very, very cool. Again, a great way to show your stakeholders, look, it's better.
We're making progress. I
We're
love
making
too that they've
progress.
added one in here for migrating workflow rules to Flow Builder and that it says action required because they're like really trying to push
They are
us in
trying
the
to
right
push it, and I
direction.
love it. Push us in the right direction. Push us all
Yeah.
towards the Flowana. So that is one thing that we wanted to point out because it's like I feel like Optimizer was released, and then it's one of those things that I just like I forget it, and then like 6 months from now, I'm like, oh my god, Optimizer, you know?
Well, when it first came out, it was really hard to do anything with because it was like a 60-page PDF that just came
This
to
is true.
you and you're like, okay, thanks. But now it's organized like into these, and if you click into them, it shows you like the actual workflow rules that need to be migrated with links to get to them and stuff. It's like actually very handy now.
It is quite handy. Um, the other thing that I wanted to point out that again could help you at the beginning of the process and help you through the process, just again to show how much change you are creating, would be system overview. And now I'm in incognito mode, so please forgive the fact that this is in classic. Just forgive.
Gross.
Forgive it. Incognito mode is a jerk. But if you're in setup and you just search system overview, that again gives you an idea of where your org is at and where you can improve. God, classic just hurts to look at. For those of you that love classic, my bad, my opinions are my own. I'm very sorry.
No, you need to move to Lightning.
um, but yeah, these are two out of the box functionalities that you don't even have to think about. It should be just a no-brainer as part of this migration process to again help you decide what to go after first, but also help to show how much change you are making. And then the last point that I will say that I totally missed earlier is wait, no, I want present mode, Tracy. You can do this. Oh shoot, and now I lost the thought. No.
Hashtag pregnancy brain is real.
Damn it. Oh crap. It's the worst because I just told you guys I have this really great thought for you guys, and here it is, and now it's gone.
Poor Tracy.
I am so sorry, guys. I am so sorry. I will be so much smarter when these kids are out. I swear to you.
Oh my gosh.
I guess I'm just gonna
Everyone's
end on
touching their
Optimizer.
friendship necklaces in your direction.
Oh my god. I've lost the thought. I'm so sorry. I've completely lost the thought. I'm gonna just
Gone
end on
forever.
um, after you have consolidated these into Flow, you have to document this again. Don't forget to deactivate those old process builders and workflow rules, because I can tell you when I transitioned from workflow rules to process builders, I've forgotten to deactivate my workflow rules. I think the same will happen in this case because, as you can see, my mind is like a sieve. Um, so it's very important to document what you have, what you've built that replaces what was old.
I think
Um,
it's gonna feel so good to not just deactivate them and maybe we'll archive them in a sandbox for whatever, but just like to actually delete them. It's gonna feel so good.
So satisfying.
So
And if you're nervous
satisfying.
about deleting them, remember our advice of spinning up a sandbox that has all of your old process builders and workflow rules. If there's a sandbox there that exists with those still there, where's the nervousness in deleting those in production? After you've cleaned it up and after you've proven that it works, of course. All
Um,
right.
Hold on, we have a couple of things. So
Okay.
Jennifer Lee is saying run Apex classes to ensure there's no conflict with Apex triggers too on those same objects. She's run into some issues with that before, so that's a good tip.
Oh yeah.
And then Michael's
Oh,
saying
I
any
remember. I
oh,
remember. Oh, okay. Oh my god.
quick
Okay.
before you forget again.
Okay, so if you're okay, so we know how we said, hey, document the big objects, because those will have the most processes and workflow rules around them. If you're nervous around starting this process, yes, look at those big objects first, but of those, start with the ones that have the least amount of process builders or workflow rules. Yes, the opportunity object is that like for a lot of us, the big meaty object that probably has things running the slowest, but that can be the most intimidating. Take on an object that maybe only has like 3 process builders and half a dozen workflow rules, and see what you can do to consolidate that, because even though it's a smaller effort, it's still an effort that is needed, and it gives you the strength and the ability to feel like you can move forward and take on those bigger chunks. That was my piece of advice. Oh my god. Thank you,
You
Jennifer
did
Lee. I don't
it.
know why your comment triggered it, but your comment triggered it. Okay.
Okay. So Michael is asking any advice for composing formulas with Inflow. He misses the easy like function and field selectors and process builder.
My advice would be with making formulas in Flow is to first research the formulas that you can make in Flow. I believe there's been great improvements with the types of formulas that you can build in Flow, but I think there are still a few that you can't. So don't go spinning your wheels on something that, it's going to throw an error for you regardless. So that's, I'd say, where your research would start. Do you have any other advice, Christy, on that? I mean,
I would say you don't necessarily have to write it inside of Flow. Maybe pretend you're
it's true.
creating a new formula field so you can still insert fields and functions as you want, and then
That's
just
true.
copy and paste it into
And then
Flow.
copy and paste it over. Yeah,
And then there's also tools like VS Code that has like the helpful like highlighting and stuff so that you know you have enough parentheses, things like that. So there are like some workarounds.
for sure. Any other questions?
Um, Mark says, don't know why it's popping in my head, but Flow can't work with time fields in your objects. I just found that out the other day.
I don't have a lot of time fields, thankfully, but I
Yeah,
imagine those in education and healthcare would.
yeah, maybe. I feel like we've answered all the other questions. There's been some really good discussion going on.
Awesome. I'm gonna stop sharing and I'm gonna move this guy over here.
Does anyone else have? Oh, Jesse says there's an extension called Better Salesforce Formula Editor, and
Oh,
so
that thing is
uses that.
glorious. Yes, that is a
I
good
feel
one,
like
Jesse. That one's
I feel like I also have that.
good.
Just pretend I'm making a fake field. That's what I always do. I just hit new field and build it there, and then just copy and paste it wherever I want it. Makes me
Well,
happy.
do we have our uh, winner for today based on the chat discussions? Who's getting a voucher?
Um, no.
You forgot, didn't you? You forgot to put them into the random name generator, didn't you?
I was paying attention to you, so
Oh, that's fair.
I'm
That's fair.
going. I'm going to just scroll and wherever my mouse lands. Okay.
Okay, all right.
Michael Crane.
Michael Crane,
Michael Crane, you win a
you've been
certification
randomly
voucher.
selected based on science.
That was totally randomly
It
selected.
it felt random. It felt random. I'll allow it. I'll allow it.
Michael, if you send me an email, I'm gonna put it in the at trailblazercgl.com.
Oh wait,
Shoot me.
Michael, congratulations.
Oh,
What certification did you just get?
go, Michael. Go,
Platform
Michael.
app builder. Very nice. Very
Nice.
nice. Good
Okay, wait.
job.
So do I need to do it again?
So
Okay, now I landed on Jesse. So
that
Jesse,
was her
now
dog,
you
not her
can.
stomach.
Yes, that wasn't me. I swear. The Amazon truck is back, I think. Okay, so Jesse, send me an email to christy.brown at trailblazercgl.com. I put it in the chat and I'll send you your code.
And Mark Jones has very nicely suggested that we do the duck race game. So for the future,
What's
as fun as it
that?
is to watch you do this and then select
I thought that was totally scientific.
for today's case, it was. All right. I think that's all we have. Do we have a meeting for next month already set up? I don't think it's on our calendar just yet.
Yeah, I
Um,
didn't publish it yet, but we'll always be on the third Thursday of each month, same time, same place.
unless the
Oh,
third Thursday next month is Christmas.
I don't think it is, but
Okay.
let's just do a recap real quick. We had our
Yeah.
beach cleanup this past weekend
Oh,
with the
yes.
nonprofit user group, and we had about 30 people come, and we picked up like 100 pounds of trash,
Yep.
and it was amazing. So hopefully more of you will be able to join next time we do an in-person thing. It was so nice to be able to actually see people's faces and talk to them.
For sure. And things that we picked up, we did have a contest for whoever picked up the most interesting piece of garbage
Oh
because,
yeah.
we lack tact. But it was very fun. Some of the interesting pieces of garbage included things that
A
you would be
TV,
afraid of, but a TV,
a
a
screen
rusted
door.
screen door,
Which why
yes.
was that even at the beach? It was very
I
confusing.
it was very confusing, but it was great to get together and network with people, and we do plan on doing this on a quarterly basis. So, be on the lookout for that in the future. And, we love seeing you guys virtually, and we hope to start seeing y'all in person coming here in, 2022.
Yes. Yay.
Yes.
All right, so we'll see you next month.
Thanks, guys. Bye.
Bye.